Good morning and welcome to the Wednesday, December 16th, 2020 meeting of the Lake Havasu Planning and Zoning Commission. If you'd all rise and join me for the pledge, I'd appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Jim Harris.
I am here.
Vice Chairman Lucas Still. Member Mychal Gorden. Member Doug Hardy. Member Donald Bergen. Here. Member Dan McGowan. Here. Member Chad Nelson.
Here.
Member Susanna Ballard. Here. Member Matthew Mychal.
Here.
Member Sam Levin.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have seated Ms. Ballard in Mr. Hardy's place for today's meeting. Moving on, we do not have any minutes ready for us for this meeting. So correspondence and announcements, Mr. Morris.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. I have none.
I'm sorry, did you say?
Sorry, yes, I have no
correspondence and announcements. Okay, well, let's move into the public hearing then. Let me first state that this is a public hearing and there is a structured order to this proceeding. City staff will present each item. There will be time for the commission to ask questions of the staff, and then the applicant will have the opportunity to present their case to the commission. That being done, we will then open the proceeding to the public for their questions and input. I would ask that anyone of the public that wishes to speak limit their trips to the podium and microphone to one only. Keep all comments to less than 5 minutes and to stay on point and not discuss subject matter that is not pertinent to the decision being considered here today. After public testimony is taken, I will then close the public hearing and bring the motion back to the table for city staff's recommendation, discussion amongst the commission, and eventually a motion to approve or disapprove. The first item on today's agenda is item number ID 202625. It's a request for a preliminary subdivision plat for tract 2405, a re-subdivision of tract 2295, block 4, lot 8, for a 4-lot residential subdivision in the RA Residential Agricultural District. Mr. Morris, your presentation.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. The subject property here is in the northeast corner of the original platted area of the city. Here's the subject property outlined in red. It's on Colt Drive. To the north is BLM property, and to the east is Arizona State Land property. And then the south and west portions are privately owned. There is a city water tank here on Colt Drive, and then there's a wash that goes just to the west of the property. Generally, the property slopes upward from Colt Drive to the northeast. The current zoning, the BLM and state lands are zoned AP Agricultural Preserve. The balance of the lots here to the south and west are zoned residential agricultural, which are the 1 acre minimum lot size lots. The subject property itself is lot 8 in tract 2295, block 4. The property is about 4.4 acres overall. Here's the wash that goes to the west, and then there was an equestrian, a 20-foot equestrian easement around the north and east property lines, as well as a public utility and drainage easement. That equestrian easement was abandoned years ago. They proposed to transfer over the public utility and drainage easement still on the east and north property lines. So here's the map of the parcel plat map. It shows the 4 proposed lots. They're all at least 1 acre in size as per is required. They're not proposing a public street for this project. They're proposing a pair of 23-foot wide ingress, egress, public utility, and drainage easements to come into the property, and then have a 48-foot radius cul-de-sac bulb, if you will. And then to access lots 2 and 3, have a pair of 15-foot easements, ingress, egress easements to access those. So that's a total of a 30-foot access easement for lots 2 and 3, and then a 46-foot wide private driveway, if you will, with a 48-foot radius cul-de-sac bulb. This is on city water. There will be fire hydrants that will be required to be installed. My understanding is one on Colt Drive and then one at the end of the cul-de-sac. It's not on city sewer, so they'll have to have individual on-site wastewater treatment septic tank systems. That pretty much just ends staff's presentation. I know the applicant here, so if you have any further questions also. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff by the commissioners? Anybody at all? Okay, hearing none, and we will take this to the applicant. Is the applicant here for a presentation? Please come forward and state your name for the record.
Britton Wolf.
Say that again, please.
Britton Wolf.
Okay.
Brittinwolf. Just available for questions.
Okay, any questions of the applicant? I think it's pretty straightforward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now at the public hearing portion. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Either pro or con, anybody at all? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion, bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends the preliminary plat subdivision plat for Tract 2405, a re-subdivision of Tract 2295, Block 4, Lot 8, for a 4-lot residential subdivision in the RA Residential Agricultural District, be approved with the following conditions. 1, a development agreement addressing access to and maintenance of city water utilities within the subdivision shall be reviewed and approved by the city. 2, all homes will require fire sprinklers. 3, fire hydrants shall be installed to serve the development. And 4, on-site wastewater treatment system septic tanks will be required when each lot is developed. Thank you.
Okay, we are at the table for discussion and or a motion, questions of staff. I'd like to start by asking why the requirement for the fire sprinklers?
The fire department requires all new subdivisions, homes in all new subdivisions to be fire sprinklered. Also, if the in addition to that, if the max grade of that property is greater than 20 feet above the 101, then it requires fire sprinklers also. So these cases, they'll probably meet the 20-foot above the max grade anyway, but despite that, the fire department does require fire sprinklers in all new subdivisions.
I understand that. Okay. Any other questions of staff? We are at the table for discussion and or a motion, commissioners. Anybody? Mr. Gorden?
I'll make a motion to approve ID 202625, request for preliminary subdivision plat for Tract 2405, based on the conditions and staff's recommendations.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Gorden, a second by Mr. McGowan to approve ID 202625 with staff's recommendations. Any further discussion on the item? Okay, hearing none, let's go ahead and vote.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, congratulations and good luck. Next item on today's agenda is ID 202622, a request for a zone change for 3448 Oregon Grande Boulevard, Tract 2217, Block 7, Lot 2, from C2 General Commercial District to R3 Limited Multifamily District. Mr. Morris, your presentation.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. So the subject property is in the southeast portion of town at the northeast corner of Oro Grande Boulevard and Buena Vista Avenue. It's outlined here in red. I believe it's about a ½ acre in size. To the west across Oro Grande is some residential, and then there's a church. And then to the north is some residential, as well as to the east of the property is all residential uses. Across Buena Vista to the south is a vacant lot, vacant property, and the fire station is a little bit south and east of the property, the subject property. As far as the zoning for the area, the abutting properties to the east, north, and west are all zoned R3, which is the requested zoning district for this property. Across Buena Vista, it's zone C1. Now, the applicant did not specify specific use for the property. Any of the uses allowed in the R3 residential zoning district would be allowed on this property. Of course, any development will require design review and or building permits as required by the development code and the building code. So they're asking basically just to rezone from C2 to R3, and that R3 zoning is the same as the budding properties in the area. So that concludes staff's presentation. Open any questions you may have, and I believe the applicant is also here. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions by staff from commissioners? Anybody at all? All right, is the applicant present? Would you like to make a presentation? All right. Okay, then I will open it up to the public. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on this item? Either pro or con? Anybody at all? All right, let's close the public hearing portion and bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends the Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for zone change for 3448 Oro Grande Boulevard, Tract 2217, Block 7, Lot 2, from C2 General Commercial to R3 Limited Multiple Family. And just as a reminder, this item will be scheduled to be heard by the City Council at their January 12th, 2021 meeting. Thank you.
Any further questions of staff by commissioners? We are at the table then for discussion and or a motion. Anybody? Mr. Nelson.
I'll make a motion to approve ID 20-2622 with staff's findings and recommendations.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Nelson, a second by Mr. McGowan to approve item number 202622 with staff's recommendations. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, let's go to the vote.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right, congratulations. Good luck. Next item on today's agenda is item number ID 202623. It is a request for a zone change for 2190 Acoma Boulevard West, Tract 2199, Block 3, Lot 9, from R3 Limited Multiple Family District to C1 Limited Commercial District. Mr. Morris, your presentation.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you again. The subject property here is in the western portion of town at the northwest corner of Industrial Boulevard and Acoma Boulevard West. It's a vacant lot at this point. The property to the north, across the beginning of the wash there, is the Office Cocktail Lounge. Across Acoma Boulevard toward the northwest is the newspaper office and the used to be Printing Plus building, I believe. And Sudden Link is on Havasu Boulevard and Acoma Boulevard property corner. And then across Industrial Boulevard is a vacant property, vacant lot. You'll see here in the zoning map, the property is currently zoned R3. If you'll notice, the other properties in this commercial node, are zoned commercial. The property across Industrial is zoned C1, the vacant lot. The properties across Acoma Boulevard are zoned C2 with planned development. And then the Office Cocktail Lounge is zoned C2 across that wash. So this request is to go from the existing R3 zone to a C1. Now, the applicant has, in their letter of intent, has asked that this be, the proposed use for this is a drive-through coffee shop. if this request is end up being approved, then it would be C1 zoning, and they don't necessarily have to do a coffee shop. They could do that, but they could do any of the uses allowed in the C1 zoning district. This is not tying them specifically to a coffee shop. Of course, any development that does go in there would have to meet all the development code, go through design review and building permit process as applicable, and things like drive-through queue lengths and things like that would be taken into account. So with that concludes staff's staff report. The applicant is available via Zoom if you have additional questions of staff or the applicant. Thank you.
All right, any questions by commissioners of city staff? Anybody at all? Okay, hearing none, is the applicant present? Would you like to make a presentation?
Jesse Sides present. I stand pat on Mr. Morris's excellent presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the applicant by commissioners? Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I have a question. If you do intend to do a coffee shop, how do you intend to lay that out with the traffic stop there?
We've been asked that question actually by some neighbors. We fully intend to incorporate a dual drive-through on the interior-most corner so as to allow the longest distance from driveway to drive-up window.
Wondering if Luke could pull up the map for that for the audience and for the public there. Yeah. Is there any way for Mr. Sides to see that or no?
Mrs. Sides, do you see the map on the screen here?
Yes, I do.
Okay, all right.
So what's your question, Mr. Nelson?
So if you could just explain to the public one more time, you know, how that would be laid out on the Acoma and industrial side.
Where the thing shows where the subject property is in the top left corner in that situation, which would, I believe, be the northwest corner there on the left. We intend to put it there in the corner, and if possible, subject to zoning regulations, etc., have a dual drive-through from industrial and also on Acoma.
So you'd have ingress on Acoma at the far property edge there where the arrow is, and you'd have both ingress and egress there, and ingress and egress at the other far extreme of the property on Industrial Boulevard, furthest away from the intersections. Does that answer your question, Mr. Nelson?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant?
Yeah, well,
Mr. McGowan?
I just want to bring up another point. We have a coffee shop now that has a problem with that. There's cars in the street at Starbucks. As long as the cars are not going to be in the street, I have no problem. But that's why I know the commissioner brought it up. Be sure the cars aren't sticking out in the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan. Anybody else? Okay. I will then now open it up to the public. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on this item? Pro or con? Anybody at all? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing portion and bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends that the Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for a zone change for 2190 Acoma Boulevard West, Tract 2199, Block 3, Lot 9, from R3 Limited Multiple Family to C1 Limited Commercial. Again, a reminder, this will be go to the City Council at their January 12th, 2021 meeting. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions of staff on their recommendations? All right, we are at the table for discussion and or a motion, commissioners. Anybody? I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Gordon.
I'll make a motion to approve ID 202623, request for a zone change from R3 to C1 limited commercial based on staff's recommendations.
Thank you. Do we have a second? We have a second by Ms. Ballard and so we have a motion by Mr. Gordon, a second by Ms. Ballard to approve item number 202623 with staff's recommendations. Any further discussion? All right, let's go to the vote.
Motion carries 6-0.
Congratulations and good luck. All right, next item on today's agenda is ID 202621. It is a request for a planned development rezone of 321 Lake Havasu Avenue North, tract 2305, block 2, lots 2, 3, and 4, from C1 Limited Commercial District to C1/PD Limited Commercial Planned Development District to allow light vehicle sales, service, and repair. Mr. Morris, your presentation.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you once again. The subject property here is at basically Highway 95 and Palo Verde Boulevard South. Its access is from, of course, Lake Havasu Avenue, just north of Palo Verde. The subject property is about 2 acres in size. You'll see, of course, Highway 95 butts it to the west. There's a residential condominium project to the north and to the northeast. There's the memory care facility to the to the east, and then to the south is a gas station, and to the southeast is a residential multiple family property. The zoning in the area, the subject property, of course, is zoned C1, as well. The properties to the south and across Highway 95 are zoned C1. The properties to the north and east are zoned RM, multiple family. Now, this request is for a rezone from C1 to C1 planned development to allow vehicle sales, rental, and service. Now, that vehicle sales, rental, and service is typically not allowed in the C1 zoning district. They're asking for a planned development to allow that use in addition to all the other uses that are already allowed in the C1. So if this ends up being passed, the city, excuse me while I get rid of this thing. If this ends up getting passed, if it's a planned development, they'll be able, whoever owns the property will be able to use any uses allowed in C1. In addition to that, the planned development would allow them to do light vehicle sales, service, and repair. Staff had talked to the applicant a couple different ways of possibly doing this. Doing it with a straight up rezone to C2, which does allow vehicle sales, repair, and rental. But C2 straight up zoning has a few more uses that are maybe a little higher, more intense than would maybe be fitting for that area. So the idea was go to a C1 to allow the C1 uses and then add the light vehicle sales and rental as part of the allowed, include that as part of the allowed uses of the property. So they're proposing to use the existing Hastings building. Here's the site plan that was submitted with the property. Of course, it's next to Highway 95, Lake Havasu Avenue and Palo Verde Boulevard. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this site plan. They're proposing as far as changes, very minimal changes. To the building itself, they're proposing 2 glass roll-up doors be added to the west side of the front of the building, and then a wrought iron fence around the property and a sliding gate at the entrance that will be, of course, locked when they're not open for business. They're proposing this blue area here to be a UTV, outdoor display area for the vehicles that are for sale. They're not proposing any changes. They will clean up the landscaping. There's some weeds and whatnot in there. The number of parking spaces on the property is 103 parking spaces at this point. The use itself only requires 50, so they have plenty of parking for that facility. Of course, they'll have to get for that change in use of the building, they'll have to get the appropriate building permits and fire department approval to make sure that it's all going to be meet the building and fire codes. And I do believe the applicant and the PED representative are here if you have additional questions of them. I believe they're going to make a presentation on this also. So if you have any other questions, staff's happy to answer what we can, but I'm sure the applicant would love to give their presentation too. Thank you.
Okay, any questions of staff by commissioners?
I have one.
Mr. McGowan.
I understand some of the product that you're selling, you're gonna make inside this building. Is that correct? No manufacturing in the building. That's just
No.
more storage for what you're selling outside?
Mr. McGowan, we can ask that when he comes to the
I'm sorry.
microphone. Anybody else, Mr. Nelson?
I just had a question of staff. For this type of vehicle sales and service, one thing that doesn't make sense to me is going in and out of the same drive when you're carrying big trailers and everything like that. If they were to, you know, at their own cost, put a second drive through there, through this landscaping easement, are they going to have any issues with the city, fire department, anything like that? If they find out in 3 months that this was a mistake, our parking lot's full, there's nowhere for trailers to pull in and out. That's the only problem I see with this whole layout. But are they going to have any issues getting through that landscaping easement or changing some of these islands to create a second drive if that becomes necessary for them?
Mr. Morris, would you go back to the previous slide? It shows surrounding properties. There you go. I would suggest, Mr. Nelson, that when it comes time for review, that the city, and if they ask for something like that, that's going to have to go before the city engineers for traffic study and so forth, as far as proximity to the intersection there. But good point. I would submit that they're probably going to need that.
I would just hate to see them get to that point and then have the city, you know, not be open to that, because I don't know what fire hydrants are there or whatever, or how breaking through that landscaping easement and possibly taking out a landscaping island or two. But
at this point, though, we're just working on the merits of the rezone and not necessarily design review. So that would be taken up at a different time. I'm asking.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for the question. The applicant, I believe, has reviewed their anticipated needs for vehicles coming in and out, including big semi trucks to take deliveries of these UTVs. I believe they've got some ideas of how that's going to work. They don't anticipate any additional need for driveways. If there were additional driveways that ended up being required or needed, they would have to meet all the traffic requirements for the city engineer. We do have a traffic engineer on staff, and we would look at that location and see how the turning moments, how those would work, and make sure that it would be safe. And if they did ask for another driveway, they could certainly ask for one. It would go through the appropriate review for traffic safety. So at this point, my understanding is they don't anticipate another driveway needed, but if they did think they needed one, then it would have to go through the appropriate reviews for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions of staff? Okay, is the applicant present? Would you like to make a presentation? Well, come forward and state your name for the record.
On, off?
All right, say something.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay, great. James Graham with the Partnership for Economic Development. Before I jump in my presentation, we did have R Engineering go out there to kind of survey the turning radius to get in a 47-foot semi. And so that we created a very preliminary drawings to make sure that that was available. But then also Hastings was using 53-foot semis. And so logistically, compared to the delivery schedule of Hastings and product, and then how the UTVs come in on a lot less regular, they don't see it as a problem, but I'll let Luke stand on that. So I just wanted to go over a couple things for this project. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I wanted to talk about retail and transition. I can go through that fairly quickly. The fact that this is a unique site, I think bears some conversation. And then from an economic development standpoint, we always like to highlight the jobs and the regional sales. I'm going to hit on that really quick. And then just some of the comments that came out of the applicant meeting on December 3rd. And then today we have Ari Lyondike Jr. Representing Speed UTV, and Max Gorden is here as well. Just to cover a couple things about Robbie Gordon's history, and then why this particular facility in Lake Havasu is a match for Speed UTV. So if I can go to the next slide. I was here just a couple months ago talking about retail, and so I'm not going to belabor it. Retail and bricks and mortars hasn't gotten any better in the last 4 months that we've talked, but the couple numbers that have been updated, we're still at over 200,000 square feet of open retail and spaces that are over 10,000 square feet. This doesn't count anything under that. And then Forbes updated that. I mean, we're closing in on almost 15,000 retail stores closing. Now, this is retail to retail in a lot of sense. So it's a bit different of a story than last time. But let me go to the unique site. No, that's okay. I love that you were pushing me on. Store's been closed for 4 years. I mean, right? Brevity of time. Let's keep going forward. But one of the things that I'm often asked is why this building hasn't moved forward. And I think that for the average person, they don't understand that this has both a land lease and a cost to the building. And this doesn't fit very many business models in retail. The land lease is quite extensive, and it takes a large business model to be able to cover that. And so a lot of people have tried to buy that out unsuccessfully, but yet you have to make a lot of dollars just to secure the property in which the building sits on top of. And so that was a very interesting conversation at the applicant meeting with the neighborhood, because they wanted to know how could such a nice facility, have not gone earlier. And there's some extenuating reasons to that. Let's just hit the next slide. I think I'll cover it in the next slides, what they're talking about doing with the building. But from an economic development standpoint, this is a huge gain for our city. It's really hard to have a prominent building sit empty for 4 years. It weighs on people, especially on 95. It's kind of hard when you drive by it, but when we've been walking in and out of it for the last month, and the residents were telling us it's going downhill, and just the general maintenance and trash that collect around there, some homeless situations that are arising around it, and so from that standpoint, anytime that we can take a great asset and turn it on, that is the huge bonus for our community. Robbie and his team are talking about a $250,000 investment just into the facility to get it back up to grade. And then in their business performa, that's 10 full-time employees at 60 to 40,000. That's 25% above the county median wage, by the way. So these are quality jobs. And then you can see the sales projections, which can tell you why this type of retail could actually work in a building like this with a sizable ground lease. 10 million in year one, and then over 21 million in year two. And I would also point out, at a time when the city's looking for revenue, this is a great sales tax that would benefit the entire community. Let's go to the next slide. I think this was fairly well gone over. They will be utilizing a wrought iron fence. And first, I'd like to say, just to answer Mr. McGowan's question, this is, as Robbie puts it, there's no manufacturing or producing of parts. All of that is done at his other facility. All these come in all self-contained in a crate. What will happen there is general assembly, just putting on the last things, wheels, steering wheels, all that kind of stuff, assembling it in the shop, getting it ready, and things like that. And so when we had the conversation at the applicant meeting, just to be crystal clear, this is not a race shop in any means. This is 100% a sales force of selling at a dealership, of just selling speed UTVs out west. And I'll let Ari kind of cover why Lake Havasu would be a tremendous place. It'll also be a real retail space for all UTVs. So one of the things that he described, like a Bass Pro Shop for UTVs, for so many different things that are used in it. And if you don't know anything about the UTV market, I had to do a little bit of research myself. In 2019, exceeded $4 billion in the U.S. It's on a 5% growth rate, but here's one of the really interesting things that I believe the coronavirus has sped this up. They're expecting the sales of 450,000 UTVs in the next 5 years. This has been sped up by the virus and people getting outside and seeking out adventure. Now we happen to be a perfect playground for that. Let me see. The last thing on the shop, so he has an arrangement with Morgan Motorsports on College Drive. If there's anything of difficulty beyond what he'll refer to as a very high-end shop, where they're assembling, where someone's getting a light bar put on, where they're having a newest suspension added, it looks more like a lab than I would say an old garage. But if there's anything that's in a heavy modification or anything that is outside of what he'll refer to as the sales force and that we should let people watch UTVs being put together. Now we're talking that he has an arrangement with Morgan Motorsports on College Street. So anything that is not in that range will be put off-site and out of the sales center. And then as far as noise, all the cars are California Air Resource Board. Mufflers are all regulated. We're pretty familiar with them. They drive all around us. They're street legal and all that. So let's go to the next slide. The applicant meeting. So we had an applicant meeting on December 3rd. We had a nice turnout. Some of the things that they were concerned about is in oppositions to how Hastings ran their business. That was generally the building sat dormant for 4 years, but most of them have lived there throughout the Hastings experience. So Hastings took deliveries at all times of the night. That was one of the things they were concerned with, how that would work. Robbie assured them that deliveries would only happen within business hours. They were interested in noise and emissions. We've covered that. One of the things that I think is important about this is we truly believe the traffic model will be lower. These UTVs are selling for, close to $40,000. And so it's not the same as buying a movie or a book. The traffic impact is less. The sales are of a higher notion. So I think that that's going to change the scale. The hours of operation are quite less than Hastings, but still operating unlike a lot of these facilities. I think that Gordon's team believes that many of these facilities close at 5 or 6. It is his interest, as in other markets, to stay open a little bit later for working people. So he's looking to have the range of 7:30 to 8:30, fluctuating on the different heavy nights. And then finally, beyond, there was a bunch of different things. Like I mean, there was some really funny aspects. People wanted to know if they would have autograph sessions for their grandkids, and what would it be family friendly? And I think Robbie really stepped in there and said, I don't think you understand the UTV market if you don't understand that it's a family sport for the outdoors. I think he did really well, but the only real concern that came up was how the lighting structures were going to work. And at this point, the only serious question is there is going to be no change to the lighting towers. They're all in city code compliance. They do need to be repaired and maintained. They don't all work, but everything is cast down per code. And then, although he has not officially fleshed anything out, Robbie is of the new school of wisdom that flooding a parking lot all night is not cost prohibitive, but also utilizing technology to save money, but then utilizing security cameras to actually do the security work. And so he will have what I'll refer to as a new school plan for that, and made a promise to work with the neighbors. Let's go to the next slide. At this point, I'd like to bring up Ari Leyendyke Jr., who was involved in the site selection, to kind of give a few words on Robbie Gorden himself and why this facility, and then we can take your questions.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Ari Leyendyke. It's A-R-I-E. Last name is L-U-Y-E-N-D-Y-K. This is Max Gorden over here. This is Robbie's son. I'll speak to you a little bit about Robbie Gorden and his history. He is a former NASCAR, IndyCar, off-road racer, has deep roots here in Havasu. His son lives here. The Hastings building has been something that he has really wanted to acquire for quite some time. His new business, Speed UTV, is really already wildly successful, even though their first chassis is still in manufacturing. They have pre-sold 9,800 UTVs, which is an incredible feat, and they have 64 dealers nationwide. This would be one of 3 facilities that Robbie owns. He owns a facility in North Carolina and one in Anaheim. They're both meticulously maintained. He's got a real, I would say, OCD personality. Everything is perfect when it comes to him, and his reputation definitely precedes himself. He's an amazing businessman, race car driver, and I think this would be really great for the city just because he loves Havasu. This is really, like James said, a playground for recreational vehicles, and I think this would be a great impact for him.
All right, are there any questions of the speakers? Mr. Nelson.
I think this is, I don't know. I think this is an exciting project and super thankful to bring it to Havasu. And like, I think James has done a great job, and bringing this to that area is just going to liven up, you know, the center of town. It's going to be great. Thank you for choosing Havasu.
Any other questions of the speakers? Gentlemen, thank you very much. All right, this is a public hearing. We will now open it up to the public. If there's anybody in the audience that wishes to speak either pro or con on this matter, now is the time. Anybody at all? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion of the meeting and bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends the Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for a planned development rezone of 321 Lake Havasu Avenue North, Tract 2305, Block 2, Lots 2, 3, and 4, from C1 Limited Commercial to C1 PD Limited Commercial Planned Development to allow light vehicle sales, service, and repair. And as a reminder, this will go to the City Council at the January 12th, 2021 meeting. Thank you.
All right, are there any questions of staff by the commissioners? Hearing none, we are at the table for discussion and or a motion. Mr. Nelson.
I'll make a motion to approve ID number 20-2621 with staff's findings and recommendations.
Do we have a second? Mr. Gorden?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Nelson, second by Mr. Gorden to approve item 20-2621 with staff's findings and recommendations. Any further discussion on the issue? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. Just waiting for technology to catch up.
Motion carries 6-0.
Congratulations and good luck. All right, next item on the agenda is the call to the public. This is the portion of the meeting where anybody in the audience can speak to the commission on any item whatsoever. If there's anybody in the audience for call to the public, hearing none, we'll close the call to the public. Future meetings, Mr. Morris.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you, yes. The January 6th meeting has been canceled. There's no items for the January 6th meeting, so we're not holding it. January 20th, 2021, which is 2021 already, we do have items for that, so we will have a meeting on January 20th, 2021. Thank you.
Okay. And with that, we will adjourn. Thank you.